I am Rae Vinton, Entertainment Relations for Gibson Guitar. And yeah, I'm excited to talk to you today.
Rae, thank you so much for coming on. Glad we were able to get things together in a quick turnaround time. A lot going on in the world. We got elections, we have fires, we have climate change, a lot going on. So again, appreciate you taking a little bit of time out of your day to chat.
Yeah, absolutely. A nice distraction from the craziness right
Yeah,
now.
exactly. We were talking about that before we hopped on. Just the constant checking of the CNNs and the New York Timeses and all the other news outlets. Yeah, this is a welcome distraction. So again, appreciate it.
Good.
But jumping right into that,
Yes.
one big thing that I like to focus on at the top of all the episodes is the Black Lives Matter movement. I think it's super important, especially for someone like me being in music, coming up in hip hop, and being a white person. I think it's super important for me to, again, use that little bit of airtime that people are giving me to talk about things that matter. And the Black Lives Matter movement is, has had a resurgence, and so I definitely want to start there. Curious, your thoughts on how things have come back into the limelight, how how and if you think these things that have changed are going to be sustainable. And just kind of curious who you think has done a great job, what sorts of artists or brands or just people or outlets that have really shown up and done a great job. Please feel free to give them a shout out. So yeah, just kind of want to start there and get your take on everything.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously very supportive of the movement and the organization. I know they've been around now doing this a couple of years, but I do think this last year, it's just been incredible to see, so many people getting involved and finally I think legitimizing itself for the mainstream world. I don't, even now people are like, oh, this came out of nowhere. It's like, no, they've been around for like 5 or 6 years, you know what I mean? As growing now into a global network and a global foundation that is really making change, not just in the communities, but now actually legislation and in the government. So it's exciting to see. And I think for me, and we've kind of talked about just in our brief conversations, being somebody that has now lived in LA for a few years, and before that, New York, I sometimes fall into my bubble of like, oh, wow, they're like, how could people still think that equality isn't something that should be for everyone? You know what I mean? But the bottom line is racism has been in our country for a very, very long time. And it was never not there. It was just, I think, hidden and masked. And then, over these last 4 years, we had kind of a bully come into presidency that now kind of allowed people to think that they can act a certain way or do certain things or say certain things and it was acceptable. And, it's incredible now. It's sad that the things that have had to lead up to this, but it's incredible now the platform that this has become. And labels have stepped up and publishing companies and artists and people are actually creating task force in their organizations, and artists are giving over their platforms to let activists speak on those platforms. And all of that is so necessary because, again, racism is like in the DNA of our country, so we have to attack it and approach it to change it from the foundation. And so I think now more than ever, it's actually happening, and it's still going to take time, and it's still going to, be a minute before we see all the progress, but we just have to keep educating ourselves and each other and being able to and willing to have those uncomfortable conversations, whether it's with your family, with your boss, with your executive. There's been people that have had told me like, oh, I brought this up in my company and like it got mixed review. It's like these people have to be willing to fight for the goodness and equality that is, everyone's human right.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Those tough conversations, a lot of times too, they start off very, very small. You know what I mean? But I think it's very important. It's just about the use of a word, right? And for one example, right? I recently had a couple of conversations about things like that with family members, and it's just like, I'm not I'm not trying to I think an important thing is to not try to what's the word I'm looking for? Kind of be like the dictator of like what's culturally acceptable and what's not, because
Yeah.
like that's a fool's errand, right? You're never going to be able to do all of that. What I do think is important is that when you do see a wrong, no matter how small, you should try and right it, especially um, something like this. And it's on us as white people to, speaking about racism specifically, it's on us to really change that, because number one, there's just more of us, right?
Yeah.
There's more of us than there are minorities in the country. That is changing with these next few generations. So I think that those conversations will be a little bit easier when we get to our parents' age. Things will be a little bit different for us, which will be good. But still, that older generation is still here. They're still going to be around for another 15 years. And if we don't have those types of conversations, those things linger and those systems don't get slowly broken down. They stay in place.
Absolutely.
And so it's super important to just say, well, I don't know if we should use that word, and just question it and just ask and just kind of poke and prod, regardless of how our parents may take it at times.
Absolutely. And again, it's being willing, and I think approaching it in a way that's like, hey, let's have it be a conversation. You know what I mean? I'm not like telling you what's right and wrong. But again, when it comes to that older generation, my dad is 74, my mom, 75, my mom's 64. It's like they're from such a different generation. I mean, I'm very fortunate to have parents that are so loving and nurturing. But again, there's been times where even in conversation with other family members, like something's been said and it's like, people are like, oh, like he didn't mean it or whatever. It's not, but there's certain words and you have to stop somebody and say, hey, that you shouldn't speak that way, or you shouldn't use that terminology. And like, but again, not in a way that you want, whenever you like are approaching people in a situation like that, I think you have to come at it like, hey, this is why this and this bothers me, and it should bother you too because X, Y, and Z, and making it be an educational thing where we're kind of growing and learning and teaching each other. And they could say too, like, oh, well, when I grew up, like, this is just how it was. It's like, okay, well, yeah, I understand that. But like, now you have to understand why that's wrong.
Right. Exactly. and not just say, well, it was the way it was. Yeah, it was that way 60 years ago, and it's no longer the case.
Yeah.
And it's a simple change.
And it still wasn't right. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. That doesn't mean there's right back.
That's still just
a great
it's just
answer.
now having the guts to kind of have those again, it's going back to just the education and having your voice be heard and standing up for, because it's right. If you've been in a conversation and you feel uncomfortable, it's because probably something's not right, and maybe the conversation fixing that or trying to shed light on it will also be uncomfortable, but that's how change happens. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And you have to push people into a space where they're uncomfortable and to acknowledge that things are wrong for things to change.
Absolutely. And the other thing too is, speaking about our parents for a second, it's like the good ones out there, the ones that have been fortunate, like yourself and myself, to have had parents in our lives and teach us great values. We're living up to what you taught us. So don't be upset if we're holding a mirror. Like, this is what you taught us. You wanted us to be the leader. You wanted us to stand up and fight for things that were wrong. So when we do pose that question, again, it's about doing it at the right time in the right context. Mm-hmm. But you can't be upset when we do that, and that's those are some of the tough conversations. I'm kind of having this therapy session with you, because those are some of the things that I'm dealing with.
Man,
and those
we're about to go into the holiday season. That's like fucking
exactly.
prime time.
Exactly. So I'm trying to I'm trying to fine tune some things to be like, how should I have these combos? But I think that's something that really stuck with me. It's like, no, you taught me to stand up. And yes, I understand that you don't necessarily deal with this every single day, but like I do. And now I'm bringing this to you. So let's just have that conversation and don't skirt it because this wasn't what it was like back then. Well, it's not back then anymore. So, well said. Cool. Just kind of want to transition over into, the second half of the conversation today, really talking about your career, talking about what it is that you're doing over at Gibson. But let's just start right at the top. I know you're originally from Pennsylvania. How did you make your way to LA and working with Gibson?
Yeah. So again, born and raised, actually outside of Wilkes-Barre, Scranton, which is of course all over right now. But I grew up in a very small little area called Hanover Township. Typical small town vibes, know most of your neighbors. My parents were photographers. My dad was a videographer. My mom was a photo photographer, and they, started their own little husband and wife team that they were wedding photographers. And they kind of always instilled in us, my brother and I had an older brother that was 4 years older than me. And we were super lucky. We had parents that were creative and loving and nurturing and pushed us to be passionate about what we wanted to do and kind of explore what, excited us. And we both were raised on piano. My brother kind of shifted and moved and started playing guitar at a very young age and was very natural at it. The musical skills did not come as easy to me, but I was so fascinated by music and I loved being around music. And I was always in awe of his commitment, and he would study and practice. And that part of it was always so intriguing to me and so inspiring. And, he went to Berkeley for college. And then he went down, he got his master's at Juilliard, and I was going to school, and I knew I wanted to be in Manhattan. I hadn't necessarily figured out what I wanted to do, graduate high school. I was 18. It's all right, well, I know I want to be in New York. I want to be my brother. And I moved there and was going to a school on the Upper East Side called Marymount Manhattan, and just kind of took a general major in communications, minor in business. And I was like, we'll figure it out. We'll try some things. Maybe I want to do PR. My roommate, my dorm mate at the time was doing PR, and she invited me to come help out at a red carpet event. So I did one or two of those and instantly knew it wasn't for me. Just the people. I was like, well, this shit is definitely not for me. But luckily, the third one I did, it was actually for the film Walk the Line. And there was a party that was afterwards that was held at the Gibson Guitar Showroom in New York. So at this time I'm I guess I'm 18 years old. It was 2 or 3 months living in Manhattan. And I went and I just helped out at the party, I don't know, checking people in, some bullshit like that. And about an hour into it, I was like, I'm not even going to want to, I'm not even trying to get an internship doing PR anymore. So I just kind of started mingling, and I met a woman that was at the party, and we just started chatting for about an hour or two. And then it turned out that she was one of the entertainment relations people at Gibson in New York. This is 2005. And like I said, we ended up just talking and chatting and kind of talking about music. And I was asking her a question. She was asking me about music. And at the end of the night, she was just kind of like, hey, would you want to come and intern here with me? And I can teach you about music. And again, at the time, I really didn't even understand what entertainment relations was. I was like, I don't know. It seems cool. Gibson, my brother played a Gibson Les Paul. That was his first guitar he got. It was a Randy Rhoads anniversary model. So I was like, oh, my brother's going to think I'm the shit. Wait till I tell him this. So I kind of right after that. And as soon as I started working with Gibson in New York, again, I was 18 going on 19, and kind of learning that world of, a brand supporting their artists, an instrument company supporting their artists. I just fell in love with it. I fell in love with the company, the people, the culture. The showroom in New York used to be the old Hit Factory, and it was on 54th between 9th and 10th. And there was just such history there. I mean, Graceland was recorded there. Michael Jackson recorded there. And they had kept it all original. There was 3 or 4 different studios. And so, I got really lucky that I met the woman. Her name was Shannon, Shannon Chaikin, and she really took me under her wing. And I went to a couple different festivals that summer. I went down to South by Southwest. And by the time I was going in, I was in my junior year, and they had asked me, would you come and kind of work full time, running the showroom there? And of course, I had 1 year left of school, and I kind of just was I'll figure it out. So I started taking night classes and weekend classes and working at the showroom during the day. And it was great. It was I was like, oh, I'm in it. This is what I'm going to do for a living. Of course, I wasn't making much money at the time. Gibson has gone through a lot of changes since then. But, I got super lucky, started working there full time, was able to finish my schooling early. And I finished a semester early. And over the last, my last few months when I was at Gibson, they had hired somebody, his name was Evan Lambert, to come on and be the global head of entertainment relations. He was in publishing years before that. He was at EMI. And then he came to Gibson for about a year. And over that year, he was working out of the New York showroom, and him and I just got close. he didn't have an assistant. So I was kind of just helping him out with some things, expenses. And, you know, he's so passionate. He's so, you know, knowledgeable. And he was such a teacher, you know, he wanted to like, I had questions, he would answer them. And that, I think that's so incredible. And he became, you know, such a mentor to me. And he ended up leaving and getting an offer to go and be the vice president of Universal Publishing. And that was in, I guess it was March or April of 2009. So I had finished the semester early, but I was still technically walking in May. So, which I like kind of just was like, yeah, well, I was graduated. I just hadn't walked.
Yeah.
So he was like, hey, I'm going to go over. I'd love you to be my like executive assistant, come and I was like, I don't know anything about publishing. And I didn't even really understand fully. I was like, I mean, I knew I loved working with songwriters. I knew I loved Gibson. And that was kind of what I like knew. I was just kind of like, well, I'm going to just stay here forever. Like, that's how it works, right? You find a job, you love it, you do forever. Not really thinking about like finances and like, you know, career longevity. So, you know, he basically just explained to me kind of like, hey, I'll take you under my wing. I'll teach you about publishing. And like, this is like the salary I give you. And like, I went back to the girl, Shannon, who was my boss. She was like, go. She was like, go take the job. This is an amazing opportunity for you. And so I did. I started working with him at Universal in about 2009. And then, you know, kind of after like 2 years, you start getting that itch of like, all right, I've been an assistant now. Like, what am I going to do next? And then he got, they offered him the promotion to be president of Universal Publishing and moved to LA. And I was like, oh shit, well, I'm getting fired. So he was like, no, I want you to go with me. And I was like, LA. And at the time I had never been to California, never wanted to go to California. Really didn't care about Los Angeles. I was like, well, I don't know, like maybe I should go check it out. And he's like, well, you have to give me an answer. We have to move in 2 weeks. I was like, oh, okay, well then, like went outside, called my dad for a minute. I was like, so, and yeah, I mean, I basically was like, all right, you know what? I had to go and like, you had to give them a year if they're going to move you. Yeah. So I figured, you know, I'll go. And it's obviously he was moving up in the company and taking me with him to be his executive assistant there. And I just felt like there was still a lot for me to learn. And he was, again, such a great mentor and teacher and so inclusive for so many of the projects and artists that he worked with that I was like, you know what, let's go. You know what I mean? If I end up hating LA and wanting to be back in New York, I can always come back. So we went and I fell in love with LA and I kept working for him and I grew in the company and, you know, kind of took over more responsibilities there and more, you know, I have always loved artist relations, events, producing events, that kind of thing. And yeah, we ended up in LA and I was with Universal there for a couple more years, I think 8.5 total between New York and LA. And then it kind of came full circle. I did a South by event with some of my old teammates from Gibson. Because I stayed close to them for a long time. There are still some people that have been there for like 14, 15 years. And we did a big event for South by, and it was like a Universal Gibson party. We partnered with Tesla on it and, you know, had like 3 or 4 bands perform at the Austin showroom for Gibson. And while I was there, we just kind of all chatted again. And they were saying one of the main girl who was in LA was going to be leaving. And I was like, oh, that's so sad. I knew her for a while. And I was like, man, that's crazy. And then, yeah, in May, I kind of was, again, getting that itch of like, all right, I feel like I'm outgrowing something. Maybe what's my next step? And it kind of felt like into place. You know, Gibson kind of reached out to me and they were like, hey, listen, we'd love to have you like come work for us. And like, it was, you know, new teams in place and new management. And so I was like, yeah, I think, you know, let's do it. So I went back to Gibson in June of 2017. Yeah, it's 3 years has passed. And it's been a little bit of a wild ride. You know, I kind of got in here and within the first year we went through bankruptcy, which was chapter 11, which I guess is very common. Because, you know, they have that HR call. It's like, everybody's doing it. Everybody's gone through bankruptcy. Like, it's like, okay. But really it was the most incredible thing that could have happened for the company. And we are so strong now. And, you know, you went through the bankruptcy. It was more so just kind of a
financial maneuver.
Yeah. And certain people, it was time for them to kind of transition out of the company, I believe. And that's how the board felt. And we brought in a new CEO, a new CMO, basically a whole new executive board that kind of now has really these last 2 years. Now we've been out of bankruptcy 2 years and it's amazing. You know, we're back to just operating more as a full functioning company that it is really synergy. You know, it's like there's so much synergy between our different the entertainment relations team and the marketing team and the factory guys. Right before this, I got off a call with product development, and we do that weekly, and it's such a beautiful like synergy that we have. And of course there's still hiccups and bumps, but we're basically now this company that has this amazing legacy, and we've been around for 126 years, but we're operating much more in a startup mode, which is, it's exciting to be a part of, a little scary, but, and obviously stressful, but exciting, so that's kind of how I got here. I feel like I'm very long-winded, so I apologize.
No, not at all. Not at all. You hit on it. And I think one of the big things that I love about that is just the willingness to just jump in and do something new that you're like, oh, I know a little bit about this, not a whole lot, but like I'm down. And I think there's a lot to be said for that, because too often nowadays we all try and be a little too calculated. I think we're all
absolutely.
like, oh man, because we have so much data at our fingertips. It's like a constant thing. And are you making the right decision? And sometimes you just have to go off that gut feeling like, okay, let's let it rip and see what happens. Like it can't get any worse. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that's a great attitude to have. I want to piggyback off, talking about the UMG experiences for just a second. In talking about events, I think that's super important in today's world, because live events aren't really going to happen for another year and a half, most likely. So just kind of talking about virtual events for a second, let me ask you this way. What do you have any sorts of tips or advice for artists on how they can create meaningful digital experiences in events right now? I mean, everyone's a little bit, I think, getting, I don't want to say tired, that's not the right word, but there's just so many IG lives going on that everyone's getting a little fatigued and a little out there. So how can an artist say, you know what, like I'm going to do something a little bit different and actually build an audience off of it?
Well, I think it's really exciting where we are right now. I had a call with a buddy of mine who works for a label, and he does more of like influential marketing, kind of a lot of label service stuff. And we were saying like how busy we are. It's like some people are like, oh yeah, I'm just working from home today. It's like we're so busy and slammed, and it's forced us all to kind of rethink, the way we approach things. For Gibson, for our entertainment relations team, a big thing that we did was tour support. A big thing that we did was we have these showrooms that our artists could come in and try out gear and jam and hang out and, play music for each other. We can't really do that now. You know what I mean? So it's like, okay, so how can we support our artists, and how can we, help navigate what this world looks like and what this digital platform looks like? And we've been part of a bunch of virtual different events. For me, I think, the live stream in the beginning, people were like, let's do some live streams. Let's do a live stream every week. Let's do 3 or 4 a week. And that's great and it's cool, but the technology, if you're not used to being on live, and if you're not super, there's certain people that it can really run with it and it's amazing. And there's certain people where it's like, maybe just do a pre-record, you know what I mean? Like maybe do a couple takes. And that's what I think now. I think it's trying to have really solid content that for you, it's like, okay, if you want to do a live stream and like, but what's the focus of it? You know what I mean? Like if you want to put on a proper concert, maybe do like a nice pre-record, get a proper sound, make sure that it's the best representation of you. So whatever it is, whether you're going to do an interview, a podcast like this, whatever it is, I don't think the live aspect of it is so important anymore. I think the quality, and I think focusing on the quality is the most important, and, not just kind of going off the cuff, but being a little more calculated with it. And I will say there are some live streams that are still happening and they're amazing. But again, I do think they don't all have to be lives. It's okay if it's a pre-recorded event and you've really taken your time to like one of my favorite concert videos is The Last Waltz. And like, I can rewatch that DVD over and over and over again, because for me, it's like such a special thing. And I think trying to create something that's special and meaningful, it's like, okay, maybe you put on a concert where it's like, okay, you're not able to do a tour of 15 shows, but maybe you do one show and then you could give that to your fans as like a package deal, and you're bringing in other aspects to it. Maybe you're creating a limited merch for that one show, that one pre-record. Maybe you're coming up with virtual meet and greets. I think there's ways to engage now that we've never been able to do in such an easy, like, before it was like you'd have to go to each show and you have to meet and greets with all these people. One of the things my buddy said last week, he was like, he had a huge artist that would come, and she wouldn't want to do maybe a lot of interviews with bloggers, but he was able to set up a Zoom, brought on 150 people, and he was able to do one interview and answer all the same questions that would have come from doing all these different phoners or whatever it was, and knock it out. And now there's going to be like, 100 plus articles written about it. And again, it's just using the resources that we have now, these Zooms, these, all these platforms that are coming out, all these interactive platforms that are coming out with the virtual hangs, the virtual meet and greets, guitar lessons virtually. Like there's so many, amazing things that you can utilize. And I think it's really just kind of digging in and seeing what's going to be most impactful for what you're trying to achieve with your audience and how you're trying to connect with your audience.
Yeah, I think it's at that live stream 2.0 right now, in a sense. Maybe not even 2.0, because I think 2.0 is really only going to be reserved for the biggest acts right now. Like you were saying, production is the biggest quality, or one of the biggest focal points. And if you don't have, the big lights in the whole rig, because you obviously can't afford that, your live stream is just going to be whatever Instagram lets you do. And because those capabilities are limited, it's going to be kind of shitty. So now you have to think about how, and this is what I like to talk about often, is like, how do you add value to your fans' life? Right. Yeah. And if you do that, you will find that value, because there's so many people that are doing Instagram lives. Look at some of the biggest accounts that go on Instagram live. And when they go live, there's like fucking 200 people that are in that room, 200 people. So those are the biggest accounts. They don't get any traction. So if they're not getting traction, you need to come up with a different way that you can, pull your audience from there into a Zoom, where even if you are only talking to 200 people, like they find the value so much more in that, because it is more interactive. You're able to talk longer, or do breakout rooms and talk to specific people for certain amounts of time.
And again, it's creating that moment, those special moments of that are, that's why people love going to live music. They love the connection with the artist, but it's also that moment in your life. I think back to some of the shows I would go to, or like moments or events that I put together, shows I put together, and those moments that you were like, oh my God, like I'm so fortunate to be here. And they're like little time capsules that you have in your memories of like these really impactful moments, and maybe their life plan. You know what I mean? I met my boyfriend at this show, or I did this. And I think it's keeping that alive and doing your homework and doing your research and saying like, okay, right now, like a lot of my audience is digging this right now, or like, and study, it is a job. It's a full-time job being an artist and taking on, connecting with your fans. And I think taking that seriously. And I don't think some people, I think it's just like, well, what do I do? What do I do? It's like, well, I don't study, like
put in
your audience,
put
in the work. Yeah. You have to put in the work and really understand what's working right now, what's trending. I still can't fucking figure out TikTok, but I understand that like it's having such a huge impact. So I'm trying, I've been talking to some artists about it, and like, you have to kind of be really paying attention to what's working right now and what is kind of, and like I said, it's the educational part of it, continuing to educate yourself on the new platforms that are coming out, or the new interacting things, the things that are working. And, a band I worked with put a song out 4 years ago, and I was talking to him yesterday because it just came up in Billboard that it was like #1 back on demand. And I texted him, I was like, holy shit, this is wild. Like, how is this song back on the charts? He was like, TikTok. And I'm like, again, so it's like that type of shit, paying attention to it and just taking advantage of it. And again, trying to create those moments where you're connecting with your fans in a very organic and authentic way, and creating those moments that they want to be a part of and they want to remember and hold on to, and maybe then it's like, you can do like a limited run of like you do a pre-record and air it as a live, and maybe you take it down after 24 hours, but then you allow your fans to say like, hey, did you love that? Would you want to watch it again? Here, I'm going to give a DVD or a download, and maybe it's $5, but hey, coming up with different streams of revenue, like that's the way that we need to be progressive, and think. And like I said, merch drops, all that. Like I've had a ton of artists that have done a ton of different merch drops, and I'm like, fuck, I love this shit. I'll buy this fucking $30 hoodie just because I love it, $60 hoodie, whatever it is. And it's because again, people want to be able to connect with the people that they're fans of, and I think support them.
Absolutely. And I think such a great piece there. It's really, I had another thought and slipped my mind right now. You got off on some good stuff. It'll come back to me in a little bit. But yes, couldn't agree more about putting in the work. This, I think what people tend to not think about is like, oh, because I can put my music anywhere in the click of a button, that like this is super easy to take off. This shit is hard work. And
Yeah.
I don't say that to deter people from trying to make it in music. I say that so that you know what to expect in getting in, so that you can plan accordingly. This isn't to
Yeah.
deter you. It's
And
like, oh
motivate
shit, this is going to be
yourself.
hard. Right, exactly. Oh,
Yeah.
it's going to be hard. Okay, like what do I need to know? What things should I be paying attention to? What do people even give a shit about? What my fans even care about? They care that you fucking care. So
100%.
if you care, that shows by how deep, how good of a production you make, how deep you go into, talking to people and being sincere. Like people see that shit, and if you can relay that, they're gonna return in kind. They're gonna give you that phone number, that email address to make sure that you can build a real relationship, and that's what's going to be sustainable. So that in 5 years, you have some random fucking TikTok moment, and your song comes back, and it's like, oh shit, this really hit. And
Yeah.
that's when you know a song is timeless for however big an audience. That doesn't matter because so few people get that moment. And so like when you
Oh,
do,
yeah.
like that's when you know it's special. And so that's when the fans connect, and it's just about trying to put yourself in their shoes and
Mhm.
say, yeah, what would they care about? What do they want to see? And if you start to do that, things will start to click for you. So yeah, uh, talking about I mean, I guess this is a great segue into kind of the next question I had for you on one of our earlier chats. You were talking about how Gibson, I'll let you explain that piece of it just in terms of how your partnerships work. But one of the big things that you guys have done is really given over your social platforms to, the artists that you've worked with, to be like, hey, we have this big audience, we have this platform. Like, it's really, here you guys go. And I think that signals you guys trying to be real partners and not just saying, hey, here's a check, or here's like, let's do, a limited run of guitars. You're really like, no, we want to help you guys in any way that we
Yeah.
can. So you mind just talking a little bit more about, kind of what your social initiatives are in working with artists and kind of doing that in lieu of just cutting checks?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, I think the cutting, we obviously we want to make our artists money and we want to help amplify their voices. And there's so many ways to do that. For us, just, as a core base, the way that we have always approached our relationships with artists is as organic and authentic as we can. So again, it's not really throwing a bunch of guitars out to people and paying them to play our stuff, or asking, like, we want to create a real relationship. We want to meet an artist and talk to them and see what they're passionate about, see what they're looking for, what they want to try, what their music's like. And there's some artists that maybe are not, on the same, like maybe they don't want the same stuff from us. So there has been opportunities where there are artists that are just looking to make money and make a paycheck. And that's totally okay too. For us, it's always been the biggest return we've received is when we work with partners that are just passionate about the music and passionate about our brand, because we are, this is our blood. Like, our team is tiny and it's small, and we work as a family and a unit, and we're very collaborative because we love this company. Like I said, there's people that have been here for 14, 15 years on our team, but there's people that have been in the factory building guitars for like 20, 25, 30 years. It's pretty wild because this brand it's a heritage too. People connect like an instrument to their legacy. I mean, some of our Chuck Berry, founder of rock and roll, he's that, you think of him, you think of that guitar, you think of his 350, you think of, Elvis, you think of like his guitar, and that's for us, like, we feel like, okay, that's our responsibility to keep those legacies alive and to keep the brand, the value of the brand so pure. And so again, I think when we approach relationships, that's just what we want to like let people know and our artists know, like, we are here to support you and your music. And we're so grateful that our instruments have been able to help the creativity among artists and inspire them and help, their music change and grow. And as far as now our social initiatives, yeah, I mean, when we went into COVID, Gibson's social presence, has definitely grown over the last few years. There was a while where it really wasn't that strong. It just wasn't a focus of the companies. And as I said, you know, we've obviously changed a lot over the last 2 years and really the last few years. But now, you know, COVID hit and we were already doing some social things, some promotion, and it was a little more limited. And we kind of just said, all right, all we have right now, everyone's inside, all we have is our social platforms that we can really, we did a homemade music campaign that was kind of allowing artists to perform their, you know, music from home, and we would showcase it on our platform. You know, we've done some lives and we've done some, you know, IG takeovers, and we're trying to be as, you know, open to like artist ideas as we can be. And just if they come to us and they're like, hey, and it could be as simple as just promoting a single. Okay, cool. Let's do a swipe up. Shoot a little video, do a little demo for us, and we'll include the swipe up. Because again, our social media is like, you know, we've got 2 or 3 million on Instagram. We've got 8 million on Facebook. Like, and these are artists that maybe have a couple thousand followers, or, you know, some of our bigger artists have a couple hundred, some couple million. But again, we offer that to all levels of our artists, whether you're the smallest artist that we work with 100 followers or 5, we've said to them like, hey, let us know. Do you have an album coming out? You got a single coming out? You want to promote something? You want to promote a book? You want to promote whatever it is? Let us know and we'll slot it, and we'll do as much as we can to help promote it and push people to it. Because again, we're fortunate enough to have a big following. And I think, you know, again, it's just goes back to us building these relationships with our artists and being able to communicate and have them have an open dialogue with us about what they're needing and what they're wanting and what their goals are, so that we can help them achieve them.
With great power comes great responsibility. And yeah, I think what you guys are doing is perfect. Just like you said, going to like the smallest artist, you know what I mean? And going all the way up. I think that's extremely noble, and I wish more people acted like that, because sometimes legacy brands tend to think that the internet is permanent, and it's like, yeah, it is. There's certain aspects that are permanent, but there's others that aren't. Stories is not permanent, you know what I mean? So to help some other person get a couple of eyeballs, you know,
Absolutely.
It's like you need content, they need a look. It seems like a match made in heaven, and you want them make it, you know, focusing your product. You know, the only requirement is like, don't swear, and you know, if that's one of your big things, and show the product. Great.
Be respectful, of course, you know, and and try to amplify like the positive message that we're all trying to, I think, reach. You know,
exactly. So, kind of on that note too, you mentioned that you guys do work with some really small artists. How can an up and coming act really get your attention? Is there something that they need to do? How can they get on your radar?
You know, it's interesting. I would say there's no real like, hey, do X, Y, and Z, and you'll get, you know, this will work. But for us, it's really come across all different ways. I've been introduced through artists, through other artists, through managers, through lawyers, through friends that aren't even in music. You know what I mean? They'll be like, oh, I checked out this band. I've had artists, you know, just Instagram message me, you know, and like, I try as best I can to check out all the music. Sometimes it just maybe won't hit with me. And there's been times where an artist has DM'd me and I've checked out the music and I'm like, shit, this is dope. I'm into it. And like, I'll hit them back and then we'll just start working together. So it could be really as simple as that. I think, you know, it goes back again to just the integrity of focusing on your craft and putting the time and energy into it. And when you're navigating and you're figuring out what is, you know, what's working right now and how do I get my eyes on things, and reaching out to those brands, reaching out to those companies. And maybe you won't hear back right away. Maybe you won't ever hear back, but maybe you will get, you know, hit back by somebody. And I think it's just approaching it in a very responsible way and saying like, hey, I'm this artist. This is what I have. This is what I'm looking to do. This is my plan. Because I will say, like, as when I see things like that come to me from an artist, like, hey, we're doing this and I'm shooting this and I'm going to have this much content. We just put out this EP, and I'm like, okay, they got their shit together. And even if music might not necessarily be for me, like I might pass it on to the team and say, hey guys, like, you know, maybe this isn't my style, or maybe something I'm not into. Cause again, I do try to work with artists that I'm genuinely super passionate about the music. And because for me, that's such a more enjoyable experience. And you know, and so yeah, I would say go for it. You know what I mean? Like don't, and even then it's like putting out music too. I've had some of my artists that like get so stuck in their head about, obviously you don't want to flood the market and put a new song out every day. But I mean, in this digital world, like people are dropping new music all the time, and it doesn't always have to be such a like grand rollout. Like we're in a different time now. So like you want to put a single out once a month, fucking put a single out once a month. You know what I mean? Like keep music. I will say there's some people that I've met and maybe I've gone to their channel and artists I've worked with for a while. And I'm like, dude, this music is from like 4 years. What are you doing? And like, I've heard the new stuff in the studio and I'm like, that shit's amazing. put some of that shit out there. Like you have to keep your sound and all your platforms up to date. Keep your bios up to date. Keep keep it synergistic so that when people go and they're like, who is this artist? Oh, I just met this artist. And you have your Spotify in order, you have your SoundCloud, whatever it is, all those pieces are in check, because if people see like, oh, there's maybe something here, or there's something here for 4 years ago, they're just going to think you're kind of fucking around. And like, again, that goes back to what we were talking about again. It's just, this is a job, and looking at and taking responsibility for the ownership of your craft, and what you, as an artist, God, really, as people now, we're a representation of a brand, and as ourselves, as an artist, you're a representation, the artist as a brand, and so you have to put yourself out there in the most professional way, and make sure that people understand exactly who you are and, what your music is.
Yeah, I think it's super important, because it's like, I go back to putting yourself in the other person's shoes. You want to work with a brand, put yourself in Rae's shoes. Why would she want to rock with you? What do you have going on? If you're not buttoned up across the board, no matter how big you are, like that, because music is an art form and it's subjective, you know what I mean? Like it can hit with you, like small following, but they're super buttoned up. You like their vision, the music hits, you're like, oh my God, it's an amazing opportunity. So I think that's people, they often miss that. They're just like, I want to be on your platform. Yeah, but why? Like, why should you be on there? How is that going to help Gibson? What is that going to do for us? And if, as opposed to coming to the table with a bunch of stuff already going, to make it easy to say yes. That should be everyone's goal, to make it easy for you to say yes. Just like you said, I got this EP coming out, I got this video, I got X, Y, and Z. It's like, okay, cool, shit is moving. There's something here. There's an energy. I'm curious. I want to be a part of it. And then if those conversations go well, then it's like, yeah, let it rip. Put them on there. Like, let's get them going.
Absolutely.
So yeah. One of the other things that I do love that you guys have done is kind of that education series with Marty Schwartz on your social channels.
We love Marty. So great.
So why do you guys think that, why does the brand think that, educating the audience, your audience is important?
Well, I mean,
and I was going to say, sorry to cut you off. A secondary question too. Like, do you think there's anything that up and coming acts can take away from creating that type of content too? Because I think too often, they think they need to make one specific type of content, or they don't really understand that like creating educational content is an avenue. So yeah, curious your thoughts on like why the brand thinks education is important, and what up and comers can take away from that.
Well, and again, it's that whole bigger, I think education, whether it's music education, whatever it is, like that's so important. And to keep educating yourself and learning about what's, how to grow your craft, like that is, I think that should always be in the forefront for everyone. Nobody knows everything. Nobody knows, like, you could be a phenomenal player. There are still tips and ways for you to change, evolve or make a new song or make a new sound, and continue to grow and become a better player. I think 100% that, for us, Marty has such an incredible audience. He's such an incredible person that, really has a way of speaking, communicating to people that connects. And so for us, that was like, we've chatted with him in the past and done some other things. And, he's done some stuff for us on socials in the past as well. And it just seemed very natural for us. We were just like, oh, this will be great. Our audience will love it. And they have, and it continues to grow. And so that just says to us like, okay, people are really into this, and there's a couple other platforms and there's a couple other things that Gibson is doing. I don't know how much I can actually touch on, but there's a service that we're talking to and they are creating like little profiles where artists can have their own pages and start taking on, maybe it's fans that want to take lessons from them. Because again, there's another avenue for revenue, and you might be an artist that has 1,000, 2,000 followers, but hell, maybe those 2,000 followers are the most loyal motherfuckers you've ever met in your life. And they're like, I would pay $50 to take an hour lesson with you. And again, it's going back to like, okay, well, what are some other cool creative things that I could do, especially right now when I'm home? And I think the education part of it is huge. Like if there's a certain, and there's no right way to play, you don't have to study music. You don't have to know music theory. There's some artists that are classically trained. There's some artists that taught themselves, there's no right or wrong in music, because again, it's what you connect with and how you, the sound that you want to get to. And so I think being able to kind of learn from all those different avenues can only impact you in a positive way.
Mm. Well said. Well said. All right. Well, we're coming down to time here. Want to make sure that we get a nice little plug section here at the end. So yeah, just curious what you're working on, what you're excited about. Where can people contact you? And then lastly, what would the name of your personal playlist be?
Um, well, I mean, there's so many things we're working on right now. There's like a lot of exciting signature releases that will be coming out the end of this year and into the new year. And that again is just celebrating some of our real legacy players. And one particular that I've been working on is Kirk Douglas from The Roots, who I've known actually since I was an intern at Gibson. I met him, 100 years ago, it feels like now, when I was just a child. But, he's been in The Roots for since like 2003. And he's just such an incredible
Captain Kirk
talent and spirit. And we released an SG with him a few years ago. And we're actually putting out a new model, a new SG with him that's going to be in 2 colors. And it's just been a really fun project. It's nice. Like, he's super inspiring and he's so passionate and he's such a beautiful soul. So again, to be on that part of it and watching the evolution of like the new the new model that we're going to put out with him. It's exciting. And, he's like, going back and seeing the reaction from fans that have played that instrument and knowing that this instrument now is going to inspire the next generation that is going to learn about him and his, his music and what he's been doing. It's really cool to be a part of that. So that's really exciting. And one other thing, we started a generational group called G3, which is young players that are just incredible. And we all kind of like took a couple on and we like mentor them and stuff like that. And it's been we've been working with them to develop the program. And I have 3 of them that I work with, Asher, Noah, and Ben, and they're just super inspiring and like some of the most talented people. And again, so focused on what they want to do and what they want to play and how, and practicing. And it's just really cool. And I think the more that we can do things like that, and there's maybe some educational stuff we put out with them. So that's really exciting for us because again, to be so connected, I don't have any like younger brothers or sisters and I don't have children. So, being able to work with like the younger generation and see the way they view things too, and the way they're navigating this virtual world, it's really incredible and super inspiring. So that's exciting for us to kind of be able to give them a platform as well and be part of that story. So I think those are some things. And then what was the other part?
Amazing, by the way. But yeah, that's awesome. Where can people contact you, and what would the name of your personal playlist be?
I'm honestly trying to get better at LinkedIn. I promise I'm going in there weekly now. I swear. So you can send me, and I guess, Instagram DM. I'm not trying to like throw out my general email here, cause that could be crazy. But I would say any of the social platforms and LinkedIn, and a playlist. Oh goodness. I would be one of those people that the playlist would be called, oh, let me like replay this song 19 times. Cause when I get hooked on, it's like even if it's an old song, I'm one of those terrible people who like, don't even go in a car with me. Cause I'll put the same song on 19 times in a row. And then people are like, why are we still listening to this? Cause it's terrible. So it should just be like songs that will be repeated now for an hour.
There you go. So, I've been victim to that as well. My wife, like only plays Lauryn Hill. We got a Google Home at the house, and she'll just be like, "Hey G, play Miseducation of Lauryn Hill," which I absolutely love. But I'm like, babe, we gotta let's get something new here.
Oh yeah, and for me it'll go like 2 or 3 weeks. Music and I'll just like overplay a record, and then I'm like, all right, well, I'll give it a break for a week, and I'll go to something else and overplay it for 3 more weeks.
Yeah, she loves that. She loves doing that. But she listens to a lot of current stuff too. Over the years I've had to force her to be like, no, we're gonna listen to this. But she has some mainstays that she just goes back to, which we all do. But I like throwing that in there to bust her chops. Yeah, for sure. Okay, Rae, thank you so much for the time. Glad to hear everybody's safe and sound out there on your end. Glad to hear about the upcoming things that you have. Really looking forward to checking those out. Big fan of the Roots, big fan of Captain Kirk and everything there, and the stuff that you guys are doing with the kids. I think that's just like awesome. And like any kid who's like super into a particular thing that young, and I could just tell by the tone in your voice that these kids are just like, really nasty with it.
Yeah,
That like that's
it's pretty
awesome.
incredible.
Yeah, yeah, it's cool to be part of. So again, thank you for the time, and we'll
Awesome.
have to
Yeah,
catch up down the line as well.
absolutely. It was great chatting.
Cool. All right, we'll talk soon.
All right. Sounds good.
All right, bye.